Ladies and gentlemen, I find myself compelled this evening to address a matter of some constitutional delicacy, though delicacy is perhaps not the mot juste when discussing an administration that deploys masked agents in unmarked vehicles to conduct warrantless arrests with all the subtlety of a Stasi operation conducted by people who've never actually read the Constitution they claim to revere. Now, I must confess a certain dark amusement at the spectacle before us. Here we have an administration invoking, and I want you to appreciate the full absurdity of this, an act from 1798, a statute conceived when the ink was barely dry on the Constitution, when the founders were still nervously glancing over their shoulders at the French Revolution's excesses, and when the very concept of immigration law was about as developed as their understanding of germ theory. This hoary piece of emergency legislation, previously dusted off only during actual declared wars, the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, is now being wielded against Venezuelan gang members as though the Tren de Aragua represents an existential military threat, equivalent to the Kaiser's Germany or Imperial Japan. And where do these creative arrests occur? Everywhere now. Schools, because nothing says land of the free quite like terrorizing children by snatching their parents from drop-off zones. Hospitals, because the gravely ill make for such flight risks. Churches, those notorious havens for international criminal masterminds seeking sanctuary between hymns. The administration has even thoughtfully provided agents with blank warrant forms to be filled in after arrests are made. A nice touch that. Rather puts the cart before the horse. But who's counting? But here's where it becomes truly Kafkaesque. Those detained are processed through expedited removal, a beautiful Orwellian term meaning deportation without ever seeing a judge, without legal representation, without meaningful review. The administration has expanded this procedure from border areas to the entire country, from people here 2 weeks to people here 2 years. One moment you're a legal humanitarian parolee. The next moment, with a stroke of the presidential pen, you're inadmissible and subject to immediate expulsion. No hearing, no appeal, just a one-way ticket to wherever the Department of Homeland Security feels like sending you. Now, we're told that this is all about law and order, that hoary conservative rallying cry. But here's the thing about law and order. It requires, at minimum, law. Not wartime statutes misapplied during peacetime. Not blank warrants filled in post hoc. Not the wholesale abandonment of Fourth Amendment protections. Not the executive branch simply ignoring judicial orders it finds inconvenient. That's not law and order. That's simply order. The kind one finds in authoritarian states where the trains run on time and the secret police operate with impunity. There's a rather chilling historical precedent for all this, you know. Masked agents operating in anonymity, conducting arbitrary arrests, answering only to executive authority, deployed domestically against populations deemed undesirable. We used to have a name for such forces in other countries. We used to condemn them. Now apparently we're building our own. The founders, those men who crafted that dusty 1798 act the administration is so fond of, would be appalled. They created a system of checks and balances precisely to prevent this kind of executive overreach. They guaranteed due process. They prohibited unreasonable searches and seizures. They separated civilian law enforcement from military power. And they certainly never intended for wartime emergency powers to be invoked against unarmed immigrants, as though they constituted an invading army. But then again, the founders also owned slaves, so perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised that their moral vision had its limitations. What should surprise us, what should alarm us, is that in 2025, in the United States of America, we have decided that constitutional protections are negotiable, that judicial orders are optional, and that the rule of law is whatever the Department of Homeland Security says it is on any given Tuesday. So yes, by all means, let us continue to invoke the Alien Enemies Act. Let us fill detention centers beyond capacity. Let us conduct raids in schools and hospitals. Let us deport skilled workers and trigger diplomatic crises. Let us ignore judges and abandon due process. And let us call it law and order while we do it. Because nothing says land of the free quite like masked agents and secret arrests. Nothing says constitutional republic quite like executive power unchecked by courts. And nothing says American exceptionalism quite like adopting the tactics we once condemned in others. I suppose we should be grateful for one thing. At least we're being perfectly honest about what we've become. The mask has slipped, quite literally, since the agents are wearing them.